Hello and welcome back to my channel, or welcome if this is your first time here. Today I'm sharing 3 dinner recipes with you that are all kind of reimagined classic dinners, just a different take on normal family dinners that we all have had, and then an amazing fall dessert. Hi everyone, welcome back to my kitchen. Tonight I'm going to be making a spaghetti stuffed garlic bread recipe that I found on Pinterest. When I saw it, I knew I had to make it because whenever we have pasta, my husband always puts it on top of his garlic bread. I always thought that was super weird, but I wanted to give this a try because I know it's something he's going to enjoy, and I think it really will be good. It looks delicious. So let me go ahead and turn you around, and I'm going to show you everything that you need for this recipe. All right, so the first thing that you're going to need is a loaf of bread. You want to get like an Italian loaf, something that's not sliced already and that's a little bit wider so it can hold the spaghetti. And then the recipe, I will have linked in the description box below, calls for tomato paste and then also just tomato sauce, like plain tomato sauce. But I had these 2 already open jars of marinara and pasta sauce in my refrigerator. Let me know in the comments down below if you're like that too. Do you open multiple jars and not realize it? But I want to use those up. So I am still going to add some tomato paste just for a deeper like tomato flavor, but I'm going to use these jars up. And then you're going to need some Parmesan cheese, some mozzarella cheese. I always mention I like to shred mine myself, so I'm going to do that here in a minute. And when I do that, I just go ahead and shred like the entire block that I buy, keep it in a Tupperware container. That way I have it ready for other recipes. And then I'm going to do a half of onion. For seasoning, we're going to need some salt, pepper, and some Italian seasoning. And the recipe calls for 1 pound each of sausage and ground beef. I'm going to half this recipe, so I'm going to use half of each of these. Now, normally for a recipe like this, I would just buy one or the other. So I could just do like for half the recipe would be 1 pound. So I'd either do like the ground beef or the sausage. But I do have other recipes that I'm going to use the other half for, so I went ahead and got both of those. All right, really quickly, I just wanted to show you the setup that I use for grating the cheese. Like I mentioned, I'm going to grate the whole block. So I just take my Tupperware container and put it right underneath the grater, and then I'll grate that whole block into here, and then I can put the lid on to seal it, and then it's ready to go for other recipes. And then today I'm going to use like the bigger grate, so they're larger pieces of the mozzarella, but you can also use the fine one. It doesn't matter, just your personal preference. All right, so now I'm going to go ahead and cut up the onion. A tip that I like to do, I've shared it here before, but in case you're new, I like to take a damp paper towel and put it underneath my cutting board. You can also do this with like a damp towel if you don't want to use paper towel. And then just go ahead and press that down, and that's going to section it so now it's not sliding all over the counter while I'm cutting. All right, so I went ahead and got some water in my pot going to boil the spaghetti. I did forget to show you that as an ingredient you need, but obviously you need spaghetti for spaghetti stuffed garlic bread. So I'm just gonna let that come to a boil and then cook the spaghetti according to the package directions. And then while that's coming to a boil, I'm gonna go ahead and start cooking my meat mixture and get my oven preheated to 375. Okay, so I have my half pound of the ground beef and half pound of the sausage in my pan. I'm just gonna go ahead and start breaking that up a little bit. And we're just going to let this brown all the way, and then I'm going to drain off any excess grease once it's done cooking. I'm also going to go ahead and add the onions in now so that way they can start softening while the 2 meats cook. All right, so I'm going to add that in. We don't need all of them. I'll do about like that much. Now obviously if you don't like onion, you don't have to use it, but we like it, so I'm going to put that in. Okay, so while the meat is cooking, I'm going to go ahead and prep the bread. I'm just going to start by cutting it in half. And then with each half, you just want to carve out like a little boat. So you want to leave some on the end here, and then you want to leave the sides to kind of hold the spaghetti in. So I'm just going to cut down this way, and then I'm going to turn it, and I'm going to cut here again, leaving some on the end. And then just connect your lines, and then go ahead and pull this out. Now, you do want to, according to the recipe, to scoop out like a good majority of the bread. I'm not going to let this go to waste. I can use it to make croutons, breadcrumbs. I mean, if it stays whole like this, even a sandwich maybe. So there's different things you can do with that, so don't worry, you don't have to waste the bread here. But you just want to go ahead and pull that out just to make a nice little boat for your spaghetti to go in. So now I'm gonna go ahead and do the other half, and then we will be ready to put some butter on this and some garlic powder and then put that in the oven. Okay, so now that we have the bread hollowed out, I'm just gonna take some melted butter. You could use softened butter and just take a knife and spread it inside. I just went ahead and melted it. It's gonna melt anyways. And then I am just going to brush the inside of each of these, which it might be easier to pick this up and get inside there, brush each of them. And I went ahead and lined my baking sheet with foil, so that way when this goes back in the oven later with the spaghetti, if it comes out of the bread, I don't have to worry about cleaning up a mess. So I would recommend lining with foil or with parchment paper. And then after the melted butter, I'm just gonna take some garlic powder and I'm gonna sprinkle the inside of it with some garlic powder. You can season this however you like. My husband isn't the biggest fan of Italian seasoning, or else I would probably add some here. The recipe just calls for the garlic powder though. So I'm just going to do that, and then this is going to go into a 375-degree oven until it becomes toasted. Okay, so now our sausage and ground beef is cooked. The onions are softened. There's not a lot of excess oil in here, so I actually don't need to drain this. But if you had any excess, you can go ahead and drain the meat. And then now I'm going to go ahead and add in the tomato paste. Anytime a recipe calls for tomato paste, I always add it in and let it cook for a little bit before I add in the tomato sauce. I'm just going to add like about a tablespoon of that tomato paste. And then just go ahead and stir that in. It will like break up with the heat. And like I said, you just want to let this cook for about a minute to let that start developing its flavor. And the tomato paste is just going to give you a richer tomato taste. So you don't have to do this step, but I do recommend it for any type of spaghetti or sauce that calls for it, because it does add that richer tomato taste to it. Okay, so now that that is cooked for a minute or two, I'm going to go ahead and add in my jarred tomato sauce. You could do fresh tomatoes, just regular plain tomato sauce, any sauce that you like. I'm going to add that in, and then I'm going to just go ahead and put a little bit of water into the jar, shake it around just to get the excess. Go. Right. So at this point, I'm just going to turn it to like a low heat, let it cook for just a few minutes, just so it can develop more of that flavor. And then we're going to add our spaghetti to it, and we're going to be ready to assemble the final dish. Okay, so I went ahead and drained my pasta. I put it back in the pot. I was cooking it in, and then I poured that sauce over it. So I'm just going to give that a toss just to combine everything. And then we're going to be ready to stuff the garlic bread. Now you can totally make this even easier and just add like jarred pasta sauce to your spaghetti and add it into the bread. It's completely up to you, like how much you want to add to this recipe, which is something that I do like about it. But I did want to kind of try to follow it as much as the recipe showed, so that way I could really test it. Okay, so now all I'm going to do is go ahead and stuff the bread with the pasta and see if I can do this without making a total mess. So I made more spaghetti, and the recipe mentions this too, that there's more than like what you need to stuff it. So you can definitely change the amounts if you only want to have enough for this recipe. But I know that my husband will eat the leftovers, so I went ahead and just made the full amount for the half of it, so that way he had some leftovers. So I'll get a little bit more on here. Excuse me. And then you're going to go ahead and take some Parmesan cheese. I'm just using the shaky kind, and we like a lot of cheese in this house, so do that. And then I'm going to add on that mozzarella cheese that we freshly grated. And then I'm just going to kind of press down as I do that, just to help this to kind of go into that space a little bit better. All right, so now I'm gonna go ahead and assemble mine. Now, I've mentioned before, I can be pretty picky when it comes to meat, and I'm not the biggest fan of Italian sausage, so I reserved some of the spaghetti to the side, and I just did it with plain marinara without any meat. So I'm gonna add that to this bread, and then we'll be ready to put it in the oven. Okay, so here I have both of them stuffed and ready to go. This is gonna go back into the 375-degree oven for about 15 to 20 minutes. This is my sweet little Chloe. She's our old pupper, but she loves to be in the kitchen. Every time I'm cooking, she's always waiting for scraps to fall on the floor. All right, here it is out of the oven. I did pop it under the broiler for a couple minutes just to get the cheese a little browned on top. You don't have to do that, but if you want it browned, then I would recommend putting it under the broiler for a couple minutes. I'm gonna let this rest for just a few minutes and then we'll go ahead and cut into it and let you know how it is. I did want to show you guys really quickly, this slices really well. So when you're wanting to slice it into like smaller portions, it does it really well. So I went ahead and slice this here. We really love this recipe. I think it's a fun way to do like spaghetti and garlic bread differently. You know, it's a really easy go-to meal for most families. So if you're wanting to change it up a little bit, I highly recommend that you give this recipe a try. Let me know in the comments down below what you think. All right, so for our second meal this week, we're gonna be making a taco stuffed baked potato. This one is super easy to make, very few ingredients again, and I think it's gonna be delicious. So let's go ahead and get it started. All right, so like I said, very few ingredients. You just need some ground beef. This is the other half of the pound from dinner last night that I'm gonna use. Then you're just gonna need some taco seasoning. I won't need this entire pack since I'm only doing half of a pound. And then you're gonna need baked potatoes. I'm doing 2 because it's just my husband and I, so just however many you need for however many you're cooking for. And then at the end, we're gonna need some toppings like sour cream, cheese, whatever you like on top of them, but I don't have that pulled out for right now. So let's go ahead and get started with the baked potatoes. Okay, so I went ahead and scrubbed my potatoes and dried them, and then you just want to take a fork and prick it all around. These I'm going to throw into the air fryer. I heard Jessica O'Donoghue talking about how she tried it and the potatoes were amazing, so I'm going to give those a try in the air fryer. If you're making this for a lot of people, that's probably not very feasible because the baskets aren't that big, so you can always just do it in the oven. But regardless of which way you're going to do it, you're going to want to poke holes into it. And then I'm going to go ahead and take a little bit of olive oil and rub the outsides of them. Okay, so for the salt, I'm going to crack that over. Mix it. Do the other side. Alright, so now I'm going to just place these into my air fryer basket, cook it at 400 degrees for 30 minutes, and then I'm going to stop it, flip them over, and then I'm going to cook it for another 5 to 15 minutes, depending on how long they need until they're tender on the inside. While the potatoes were cooking, I went ahead and prepared the taco mixture. So I just browned my ground beef, added in the amount of water according to the package directions and the seasoning. And then I went ahead and let those simmer for a few minutes just until the sauce reduced down and thickened up. And then when the potatoes came out of the air fryer, I just sliced them in half, topped them with the meat, added some cheddar cheese and some sour cream. But you can do whatever you like here with the toppings. The options are endless. Oh my gosh, that dinner was absolutely amazing. I love a fun new way to have tacos because sometimes it can get a little bit mundane, and those baked potatoes in the air fryer were perfection. So if you're not making a bunch of baked potatoes for like a large group, I highly recommend making them in your air fryer if you have one, because the inside was really perfectly tender, but the outside skin was perfectly crispy. Okay, so the last recipe in today's video for dinner is going to be a meatloaf that's topped with mashed potatoes. It's something that my dad saw on TikTok actually, and he tried it and said that everyone loved it, and all of my brothers and my mom were raving about it. So I went ahead and decided to make it in this video, mainly because, well, one, it sounds really good, and 2, this video kind of turned into like reimagined classic dinners. So just new twists of things that you can do with classic dinner recipes that we all know and love. So without further ado, let me go ahead and turn you around and show you everything that you're gonna need in today's recipe. All right, so here is everything that you're gonna need. For the meatloaf itself, you're gonna need 1.5 pounds of ground beef, and then you're gonna need a little bit of cottage cheese. Now, this kind of freaked me out, I'm not gonna lie, and I'm not telling my husband that this is going in it, so let's see what he says. But from what I read in the recipe, it's supposed to add moisture and it melts down and it's just kind of cheesy, that you're not supposed to be able to tell that it is cottage cheese, so we'll see. Then you're gonna need some barbecue sauce, whatever your favorite kind is. We love the Sweet Baby Ray's. Some Worcestershire sauce, 1 egg, garlic. We're gonna use half of this onion diced, some seasoned breadcrumbs, and then you're gonna top it with some mashed potatoes. For easiness, tonight I just got the family size of the Bob Evans mashed potatoes at Walmart. You can definitely use, like the recipe shows you how to make homemade mashed potatoes, or you can use whatever your favorite recipe is, but this is what we're gonna do tonight. And then we're gonna need some shredded cheddar cheese, so I went ahead and shredded that earlier this week and have that ready. And then I'm also gonna cook up a few slices of bacon and crumble it on top. All right, so I went ahead and placed my meat into a large bowl, and I'm just going to go ahead and add in all of the rest of the ingredients. So for the egg, I'm just going to go ahead and kind of get it started whisking. You don't want to over mix meatloaf once you have your ground beef in. Typically, I would mix up all the ingredients and then add the meat into it. But I'm just going to go ahead and go in with my hands, so I'm going to add everything in at once. Next up is the barbecue sauce. And then our 1/3 cup of cottage cheese. Don't tell my husband. And then 1 tablespoon of Worcestershire sauce. 1 cup of the seasoned breadcrumbs. And then our diced onion and garlic. So I just went ahead and finely minced the garlic, and then same with the onion. I just kind of did a fine chop on it so that way there weren't big pieces. So I'm going to go directly in with my hands, and you want to mix this just until it is combined. You can use gloves if like feeling the meat bothers you. It doesn't bother me, but I did take my rings off, and make sure you have clean hands if you're not wearing gloves. And then we're just going to mix this all till it's well combined, and then again watching just to not over mix it. And if you're not using seasoned breadcrumbs, like if you only have like plain breadcrumbs at home, I would just go ahead and season this with like salt and pepper. You can go in some like onion powder if you like, even garlic powder, but we do have the garlic in there, but at least salt and pepper. All right, so that is kind of just well combined. So now we're gonna go ahead and put this into our pan. All right, so I went ahead and sprayed my 13x9 pan, and then you're just going to press this out until it forms the bottom of the dish. I had a little bit less than 1.5 pounds of ground beef. I still think it's gonna be fine, but yours might look a little bit fuller. But I'm just gonna try to make this as even as possible. All right, and then we're gonna go ahead and place this into a preheated oven at 375 for 30 minutes. All right, while the meatloaf is in the oven, I'm gonna go ahead and cook my slices of bacon here. No matter how crispy you like your bacon, you always wanna start it in a cold pan and cook it on low heat. That allows the fat to render out of the bacon properly, so no matter how crispy you want it, it's just gonna taste so much better. So if you've never done that before, definitely give it a shot. Again, cold pan and low heat. All right, so I took my meatloaf out of the oven after it cooked for 30 minutes, and then per the recipe's instruction, I drained off any of the excess grease. I only had a little bit, so I went ahead and got that off. I'm gonna say it wasn't the easiest to do. It wasn't that difficult, but it all kind of slides because the meat shrinks when it's cooking. And then now I'm just gonna top it with those mashed potatoes. Since I did not do homemade mashed potatoes and I'm doing the Bob Evans, I went ahead and microwaved them according to the package instructions, but I only did the first 4 minutes. They say to cook it for 4 minutes, and then you take it out and stir it and put it back in for a few more or a couple more. But I just did the first 4 just to get them like warmed up a little bit. And then now we're gonna go ahead and top that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and put on the rest of the toppings. Now, when I first saw this recipe, I had actually seen something pretty similar on Pinterest, and I thought, oh, that's cool. It's like a different way to do meatloaf, but why would you do that? Because we often eat meatloaf with mashed potatoes, and it's just like making an extra step, but this really is different. So I really am excited to try it and see how it turns out. All right, so get that one there. Then I'm gonna go in with that shredded cheddar cheese and just tap it here. And you can do as much or as little of this as you would like. And the recipe says like 1.5 cups. All right, and then I have my cooked bacon. I'm just gonna go ahead and crumble that over the top. And you can see, like, doing that method, even though I like it crispier, it's not burnt by any means. So I highly recommend cooking your bacon that way. Same as if you do it in the oven. If you cook your bacon in the oven, you always want to start it in a cold oven, so that way the fat can start rendering out while the bacon is cooking and you're waiting for the oven to come to temp. And the recipe called for 6 slices of bacon. I'm just doing 5 because that's what would fit in my pan, but you can do as much or as little as you'd like. All right, now this is going to go back into my 375-degree oven for about 10 to 15 minutes until the cheese is melted and the potatoes are hot. And whenever I'm cooking, especially with cheese, I always have an audience. Preston. Hi, sweetie. And little Miss Chloe. All right, I'll give you guys a little piece. All right, here it is out of the oven. It looks incredible. It smells incredible. I cannot wait to dive into this. All right, this recipe is definitely a keeper. We loved it. I think it's a fun new take on doing meatloaf and mashed potatoes. And I also think it'd be really great for a weeknight meal because you can absolutely make the meatloaf ahead of time. Just have it in your refrigerator ready to pop in the oven, so it's really quick. But I really hope that you give this a try. If you do, let me know in the comments down below what you think. Alright, this week's fall dessert are these caramel apple cheesecake bars, and oh my gosh, these are absolutely amazing. So I'm going to start out by making the crust. It's a shortbread crust, so I'm going to add in some flour and brown sugar to a large mixing bowl, and then I'm just going to take a fork, you can use a spoon, whatever you'd like, and I just like to go ahead and like toss that around to incorporate the sugar into the flour before adding in the butter. And when I add the butter in, you just want to do it in chunks. My chunks were a little bit bigger, so you're going to see me kind of struggle a little bit. I don't have a pastry cutter, so I was just using my fingers, so I just broke those chunks into smaller pieces and then just used my hands to work it into the flour and sugar mixture. You want it just to be like a large crumb, and then once you have that finished, you're going to place that into a greased 9x13 pan and just use your hands to pat that down firmly, and then you're going to place this into a 350-degree oven for about 15 to 18 minutes until it's lightly browned. While that was in the oven, I went ahead and prepared the cheesecake filling. So I'm just going to have a couple of blocks of cream cheese here that are softened, and then to that I'm adding in some sugar, vanilla extract, and a couple of eggs. And you just want to beat that until it is well combined, and you want to make sure that the cream cheese is smooth. So that's why you want to make sure that you have it softened. And then I'm just going to set that to the side and get started on preparing the apples. So for the apples, you just want to peel them, and then you're going to dice them into a small dice. I just went ahead and cut like my sides off of the apple here and ran my knife lengthwise and then turned them and ran it through again. You want it to be smaller pieces to make sure that they cook fully in the oven. This sweet girl loves her apples, and I love the noise it makes when she eats them. So once I diced the apples, I added them to a small bowl, and then you're just going to add in a little bit of sugar and then some cinnamon and nutmeg. And then you just want to toss this well to try to disperse the sugar and the spices to that way they can be evenly coated on the apples. And then again, I'm going to set this to the side so we can do our last step, which is making the streusel topping. And for that, I'm just going to combine some flour, brown sugar, and some oats. Again, using a fork just to distribute that around before adding in my cold butter. And again, I'm just going to use my hands here, but if you have a pastry cutter, absolutely use that. It makes it quicker and easier. But you just want this to, again, be kind of like a large crumb. So now I'm just going to assemble everything. To my par cooked crust, I'm going to add on the cheesecake layer. I'm going to try to get that as even and smooth as possible. And then I'm going to go in with the apples, same thing, just trying to evenly disperse them on top. And then finally going to take the streusel topping and sprinkle that across the top as well. And then this will bake back in the 350-degree oven for about 25 to 30 minutes. Now all ovens are different. Mine took about 35 minutes actually. So you just want to cook it until it is soft set, which means that it's not going to have like a wiggly center, like to be like jiggling around. And then once it comes out, I went ahead and topped it with the caramel drizzle. Then you want to let it cool on the countertop for an hour, and then you're going to place it in the refrigerator to cool for 3 hours before slicing it into the bars. And this was absolutely amazing. I highly recommend this recipe. If you're looking for a new fall dessert, this one is absolutely perfect, so I hope that you give it a try. Thank you so much for hanging out with me in my kitchen today. If you haven't done so already, I would love for you to subscribe to my channel before you go, and I will see you in the next video.